Okay, good morning, everyone. Let me call to order this work session, Mayor Commission work session. Today is January 16th, and the time is 10 o'clock a.m. Hope everyone had a good weekend, and we'll dive right into the agenda. The only item on the agenda is the Waterfront Visioning Session Initiative. Commissioners, you may recall that when we were having the discussion on the marina, I did announce that I wanted to undertake a comprehensive citywide survey of citizens to find out what they wanted to see in their waterfront. And this is kind of the initiation of that effort. We'll hear more about what is being planned, but again, the emphasis is hearing from residents throughout the city. It is everyone's who is a resident of the city. It's all of our waterfront, and I think it's important for as many people as would like to have a part in that conversation. And so you're going to hear today about a strategy to engage folks throughout the city on what they want to see in their waterfront. This is not an initiation of any specific plans. This is a community engagement effort. And so, Ms. Freo, I'll let you dive in with further description.
Thank you, Mayor, and good morning to you and to our commissioners, city administration, and members of the public. For the record, Jennifer Ferriel, Housing and Community Development Director. And just first and foremost, I just want to say how really excited I am, and I want to thank the mayor and city administration for really tasking us with this very important activity. I am a resident of West Palm Beach. I'm a downtown resident, and I utilize the waterfront more times than I'd like to admit. So it's really exciting for me personally and professionally to take on this task. So thank you again, Mayor. And as the mayor alluded to, the purpose of this community initiative is essentially to solicit feedback from all city residents. In our initial discussion, and when the mayor shared his vision with us, he wanted to make sure that this was an inclusive process where we reached out to all neighborhoods throughout our city, to the business leaders in our city, the local groups, any visitors, on how we can collectively really create a more vibrant and equitable, that was a key goal of the mayor, how we can create a more equitable downtown waterfront. I want to be very specific in terms of the boundaries. We're really discussing from bridge to bridge, specifically from the Flagler Memorial Bridge on the north end of the city to the Royal Park Bridge to the south. And one of the things that I want to make sure that we, as we talk about this process and what our goals are, this is essentially a very collaborative process. We want to do this right. So in the event that certain things are not working or that we're not getting the feedback that we'd like, we will pivot from that and we'll go in a different direction. Again, we want to do this right, and we want to make sure that we're hearing from everyone that we want to hear from. And so our first, and the purpose of today and our first attempt here is to get your feedback as city commissioners and the elected officials of our city on ways that we can enhance what's being proposed, to let you know that if there's any potential guidance or feedback at any time throughout this process, that you have the ability to contact me directly, and we'll consider the feedback that is being provided. Ultimately, once it is all said and done, we will have a final recommendations report, and that report will essentially provide all of the feedback that was gathered, give you some short-term and long-term strategies so that you as leaders can make decisions moving forward on how we can enhance this very important public space. As we were discussing in terms of how we were going to develop this approach, we wanted to make sure that we had the right people at the table with the appropriate levels of expertise to take on this task. First and foremost, we wanted to have a consultant that really understood the diversity of our communities and how different our neighborhoods are, and one that can really help us develop an approach that targeted and met the needs of every different community. So with that, we were able to select and to work with Articulate Consulting, Charisma Adams. Many of you, if not all of you, know Ms. Adams, as she was a very integral piece in helping us develop our BERT community engagement process. Unfortunately, Ms. Adams had a medical emergency, so she could not be here today. So I am going to wing that part of the presentation, so please give me some grace on that. And we also, and the mayor was very keen on this as well, he wanted to make sure that we had a technical expert that really understood what it's like to activate public spaces, that they have worked before on waterfront engagements and or downtown waterfronts and enhancing those public spaces. And with that, we were able to do some research, and we were referred to street plans, and they have done fantastic work in Miami. Tony Garcia, who is the principal, was not scheduled to be here today, but he is part of the project team. But on behalf of street plans, we have Irene Balza, who is the project manager, and she will be presenting today on their behalf. Also, as a part of the project team, obviously, our civic engagement supervisor, Ms. Charity Lewis, she will be assisting us with this efforts as we move forward. Over the last several months, we have been making some segues in terms of how we were going to initiate this process. And the first thing is that we wanted to develop a strategic marketing approach where folks were going to undoubtedly know that, what we were trying to do here. So Charisma, being the very creative person that she is, she came up with a Your Waterfront, Your Way initiative. She really piggybacked off the mayor's initial conversations, what he said, that he really wanted this to be a community approach where all residents were part of the process. And it really ties to his vision of making our city a community of opportunity for all. So with that, the Your Waterfront, Your Way initiative was born. And under this initiative and the goals that we're trying to accomplish here, we have some specific tasks. Again, these tasks, we may add some things, we might enhance on certain aspects, but just overall, our goal is to develop and implement a community engagement and outreach plan. How are we going to target our neighborhoods? How are we going to target our visitors, our local groups? How are we going to do that in ways, again, knowing that they're very different and that their needs may be different? We have developed and we are developing a very comprehensive list of stakeholders, making sure we're engaging the right folks. We are developing and implementing a community survey. That survey will be on the forefront of everything that we do. We want to make sure that we're gathering the information that we want to gather, asking the right questions. I want to talk a little bit about the survey as well, just letting you know that as we do our engagement and as the surveys start to get completed, we are going to have an opportunity to know what areas we need to do additional outreach in. So if, for example, we're seeing that we're not getting a lot of feedback from the North End, or we're going to target that area, do more door to door. We're going to come up with a different strategy, but that survey will be on the forefront of what we do. We're going to host 3 hybrid in-person and Zoom community visioning meetings or workshops. Those meetings are essentially going to be comprised of the South End neighborhoods, including the downtown, the North End neighborhoods, and then the Western communities. We're trying to figure out, kind of what those boundaries are, but they will be open to all members of the public. We're going to have 3 stakeholder walkabouts. So those walkabouts were really going to be on the actual waterfront with some of them will be with residents. Some other stakeholder walkabouts will be with community leaders, a selected few of leaders, and then others will be with perhaps business community or a specific group where we can collectively go out to the waterfront, look at it, assess it, and host these walkabouts. And then ultimately, of course, we're going to complete a report that will be shared with you that will have some recommendations in terms of how we can move forward. And some of the stuff that we've done today, obviously, we've done some of the marketing campaigns and we formulated our strategy and working with our consultants, but we've also done a little bit of due diligence internally, right? We have obviously done some information gathering. There have been previous plans that have been completed, initiatives in the past where there's a lot of information. We've ensured that we've looked at any potential restrictions. As we know, the waterfront was developed with bond dollars. So we wanted to make sure, are there any restrictions that are placed on this space that we're looking at? We've hosted 4 internal stakeholder meetings. We've had meetings with all of the directors and assistant directors and or managers, and we've gotten their input, their guidance. Every department is looking at it from a different lens or a different perspective. Engineering will look at, from a traffic perspective. Obviously, Parks and Recreation is going to look at it from an events perspective. So we wanted to make sure that we got everybody's feedback and understanding of how they utilize the waterfront, so that when we are looking ahead, we have these things in place and these things in back of mind, knowing that there may be different uses or restrictions that may be on this space. And then, of course, we're here today getting your information, getting your feedback, and presenting this strategic approach to you. This was the point where Ms. Adams was going to come up and discuss and provide some guidance in terms, or some feedback in terms of articulate consulting and her level of expertise. All of you are already familiar with Charisma and all the great work that she's done in our city. So I will skip over this slide and talk a little bit about our engagement approach. So first and foremost, we want to make sure that we have the right stakeholder list. So obviously, internally, we're going to be working with the city commission, city staff, board members, and vendors. We have been working closely with the DDA as well. We just want to make sure that we have a comprehensive list of internal stakeholders. From an external stakeholders perspective, we have come up with a really comprehensive list, and I'll just read some of them. From HOAs, we have ENCON, El Cid, Coleman Park, Pleasant City, Roosevelt Estates, Spencer Lakes Estates, Bear Lakes. We want to make sure that we're targeting everyone. Partner agencies, we want to make sure that we're including Discover the Palm Beaches, the Cultural Council, Sunfest, the DDA, PalmTran, the Boat Show. From a business perspective, we want to reach out to the Northwood Merchants Association, to the Historic Northwest Business Association, the Realtors Association, the Norton Museum of Art. From a faith group perspective, Family Church, Christ Fellowship, Tabernacle, Payne Chapel. We are also working on reaching out to, of course, our community organizations, the Urban League, North End Rise, United Way, Salvation Army, Community Foundation, and of course our disadvantaged populations, right? Latin Quarters, Esperanza Center, the Haitian Community Center. We want to reach out to as many stakeholders as possible to make sure that we are including all end users in our city. From a community engagement approach, we've also been working on our engagement assets. So as you see here, we have developed our flyers that will be distributed amongst our stakeholders and throughout our city. The flyer is going to talk a little bit about the project, the purpose of the project. It's going to have a QR code for folks to complete the survey that we've discussed. It's going to be provide where the public meetings are going to take place, the locations, the times, as well as the Zoom links in case individuals are unable to attend. So these are going to be distributed throughout our city. We're going to have door hangers, and that's when we do our door-to-door outreach. And door-to-door, we won't do that in all of the communities, but we are going to target the communities that we know where folks don't necessarily, use social media or may not necessarily be active on, on Instagram or Facebook or Twitter. So we will be doing that. And in the event that we knock on someone's door and that they're not available, we will be leaving these door hangers in their home. We've also are going to have T-shirts. So any of the staff that's going to do the engagement, they will have T-shirts. Again, the QR code is going to be on there. They're going to have lanyards to be able to represent this initiative and what they're doing. You can see some of our social media posts. We're going to have a project website. We're going to have email blasts. We have a really comprehensive list of stakeholders and that we'd like to send emails to. And again, as these surveys start to come in and as we're getting feedback, we can pivot on the strategy. Again, so let's say we haven't heard a lot from the South End and the Hispanic community. We're going to go down to the South End. We're going to target this specific area, make sure that we're going door to door. I want to also point out that our flyers and our materials are going to be in Haitian Creole and in Spanish. So we want to make sure that in the event that we have households that do not speak English, that we're providing them the information that they need. And that pretty much concludes the community engagement approach and kind of how we're going to market this specific portion of the project. But with that said, I'd like to ask Irene Balza to come up and talk about the scope of street plans and what they're going to be assisting us with under this initiative. Thank you.
Before we do that, are there any questions for Ms. Ferriero before we hand it off? Commissioner Fox?
Thank you so much, Jennifer. This is great. Is it possible to get a copy of this presentation to share with residents that might not be watching?
Absolutely.
Okay, and I also just wanted to mention, I didn't hear you mention in the stakeholder list the downtown merchants and the Downtown Neighborhood Association, but I assume they're on the list, but just want to make sure.
Absolutely. That is one of the critical groups that we'll be working with.
Commissioner Lambert?
Thank you so much. I am very excited to be going over this. Mayor, thank you for your leadership on this. I think it's important that we remember that this came out of the discussion that we had on the dais and that the residents specifically asked for an opportunity to envision and to give feedback, because I know I recently heard some feedback to us having this discussion that, oh, the waterfront is perfect the way that it is, but we heard otherwise at that recent meetings, and I'm very excited to see such a robust and thorough plan for this. I noticed that on some of the flyers, when you were saying scan me there, it says take a survey, but I don't know that you talked about the survey. So can you share, if people can't attend in person or via Zoom, will they have other opportunities to give their feedback?
Yes, and that'll be through the survey. There will be a comprehensive survey that will, and that's going to be a lot of where our data is going to come from. So yes, we'll have the meetings, we'll gather data from the meetings, but even at the meetings, we're going to have the individuals who attend take this survey. So the survey is going to ask, critical questions. We're still developing that, and Irene will touch on that a little bit. It's going to ask where the locations of the individuals, and it's going to ask, general questions in terms of what they'd like to see. Also, we're going to have an email where individuals can send feedback. We're going to have that project webpage. So through there, they can do that as well. So there's going to be multiple ways for residents to provide feedback. And again, knowing if none of these things work, we can still come back to the drawing table and make some changes to our approach. Again, this is a collaborative process, and sometimes when you want to really make it collaborative and get what you want out of it, which is the feedback, you want to be able to have flexibility and be able to pivot. So if something's not working, we're going to make sure that we address it and make the changes that we need to.
And that's a key point. We're not just doing the same old when it comes to community engagement. I told Jennifer and the team I wanted them to think outside the box as to how we could reach those communities who might not otherwise feel that they either do not want to participate or do not have an opportunity to participate. If you have these charrettes in the evening or afternoons, people are working, they've got family responsibilities, etc. So we want to try to use as many platforms, as many mechanisms as possible to solicit a broad support, a broad amount of feedback on this very important issue. Historically, there have been charrettes and stuff when there have been waterfront studies, and I've never felt that those adequately reached out to folks from throughout our city. Again, I don't care whether you're north end, south end, out west. This waterfront is an asset. It's a jewel, and it's yours. And we want to hear from you, no matter where you live, as to what you want to see in this waterfront. Commissioner Lambert, I know you had your hand up.
Thank you. Just a follow up to that, it seems like it will be very thorough and robust. Do we have a time frame?
Yes, we will get that towards the end.
Okay,
yes.
great.
And I just want to add, too, one of the things that I didn't get an opportunity or failed to mention was that we are going to attend various community events. So in the event that, there's different groups that are having gatherings or that they're having events, we're going to be there with our shirts and our lanyards. We're going to be at the Green Market. We're going to be at commission meetings after the fact. We're going to be at Clematis by Night, not just city-initiated events. So if there are big events that folks are hosting, please, that we're not aware of, feel free to let us know, because we want to be there. So again, like the mayor said, it's not going to be your cookie cutter community engagement. We're going to do the best that we can to reach the folks that we need to.
Okay, anything else for Ms. Ferriero? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Ms. Balzer?
Thank you so much, and good morning, everyone, and thanks for having us again. So you just heard from Jennifer go over sort of Charisma's role in Articulate Consulting in creating and implementing an engagement strategy for this effort, and then I'll briefly go over our firm Street Plan's role in implementing, the 6 outreach activities that Jennifer mentioned and how that will work out. So this is our team. It's led by Tony Garcia, our co-founder and principal, based in our Miami office, like Jennifer said. And he's worked extensively in the past with the city and the DDA here in West Palm Beach and is very familiar with the history of West Palm Beach. We also have Julie Flynn as senior project manager, and she previously worked for the city of San Francisco for many years. And she really managed, the city, some of the city's most important public spaces and led the activation of those spaces for many years. So she'll really be able to bring in that expertise. Then we have myself, Irene, as project manager, and Catalina Ruiz as planner. I, for the past 8 or so years, have worked, across South Florida in many cities, in Fort Lauderdale, city of Miami Beach, Deerfield Beach, sort of working with them to enhance their public spaces and their transportation networks as well. So, at Street Plans, we work on a wide range of projects from urban planning and design, placemaking, public space activation, and transportation planning. But really, for all of our projects, what we really try to do is take everything from planning and see it all the way, from inception and see it all the way through to implementation. So we work with our clients and cities, on the planning stage and seeing out what possibilities can happen, what can be done, who needs to be engaged, who they need to work with, what funding sources need to be looked at, and all of that. Then we go into the design stage and, really refine this design or of anything that we look at with the community and with stakeholder groups. And then we go and see what can be implemented from this design and go and do that as well. So when it comes to public spaces, we've been able to work with different cities of different sizes and different contexts to really, help them identify where their challenges and opportunities lie. So we've been able to do that, in DC with their public spaces, or in San Francisco with the San Francisco Parks Alliance, to really, pinpoint and look at, their current fabric and see what, how they can move forward in the future. So this is, I'll describe what Jennifer briefly mentioned about the meetings. So, like she said, we'll have three separate community meetings. And these will be planned, at different times throughout the week or the weekend, so that we can get, a wide variety of people to show up. Those that can't come during the weekend, the weekday can come during the weekend, and we'll plan it at different hours. So we'll have three separate events, and we'll bring in, all the internal stakeholder groups, the external stakeholder groups, as well as the broad community members. And what we do is, we'll have a brief presentation going over, the background of this visioning effort. And then we'll have different activities. So, for example, we'll have, a printed map of the waterfront printed out, and people can come in and annotate them and, point out their comments that they see as everyday users of these spaces. We'll also have different activities like visual preference boards, where people can go and, physically vote on different interventions or things that they would like to see as part of the waterfront based on, what they look like or what their function is and other things like that. So that's, pretty much the makeup of these community meetings, and they're, typically held in an enclosed space. But then as another component to this, we also have 3 planned walkabouts. And these are a little different, the way we formatted these are, we'll have 1 walkabout for the internal stakeholder group that Jennifer mentioned, and then 2 other walkabouts open to the public, as well as, other stakeholder groups. So we plan a day, and this is also either during a weekday afternoon or a weekend morning, where we have a route and, of the waterfront, and we plan to walk through it, and then we'll create a sort of worksheet, with relevant questions that, we're prompting people, that will, they'll be able to write down their observations as they see them in real time. So, our team will be out there, the city will be out there, and, prompting relevant questions, pinpointing things that we see to sort of get that conversation going about, what the future of the waterfront will look like, and different items sort of such as, where more shade might be needed, or where, certain activities might work. So that'll be part of the 3 walkabouts that we have planned. And after these 6 engagement activities are completed, what we'll do is, and Jennifer will go over this briefly again, but what we'll do is we'll take everything that we've learned from this sort of existing conditions analysis, where we've looked at, all the city's existing plans and initiatives. We will record everything that, we've heard from the stakeholders, from the community meetings, at the walkabouts, and then we'll digest it all into a document that, shows high-level strategies about how the city can move forward. And it'll also it'll highlight, short-term projects and long-term projects based on these findings. So I think I can turn it back over to Jennifer now to talk about what this will look like.
Before you go off of that, I think that addressed your question, Commissioner Lambert, about timing. I mean, is that correct? We're looking at the March-May 2024 timeframe?
Yeah, Jennifer will also discuss that in more detail in the next slide.
All right.
Thank you, Irene. And as Irene alluded to or stated, and as a big topic of this conversation, ultimately we want to have a report following the BERT engagement process, where we want to make sure that we're documenting all of our engagement, And so that, oftentimes I always hear this, oh, well, we went to this meeting, we went to that meeting, and they said this, they generally said that. No, you're actually going to have things that you can look at, data that you can look at to get a real understanding of what the needs of our community are. And they may be different depending on where the residents live. So we may find out that in the North End, this specific group would like to see more of this, whereas the downtown neighborhood would like to see more of this. So you'll have that data presented in front of you. In this report, we'll have an executive summary. We'll have obviously some background. We do want to talk about existing conditions. Some of that will include some of the restrictions that we may have and things that we want to consider as it relates to that. What may be some overlooked opportunities in comparison to other waterfront locations throughout our nation. Any, again, development regulations that may restrict the ultimate use, bond restrictions. We want to have an overview of the engagement process over the walkabouts, and then finally a recommendations report or recommendation summary with short-term, long-term wins. And then obviously, one aspect that we want to include is what are the economic and environmental impacts of these recommendations. Those are considerations that as you're making decisions, you want to have on the forefront. So in terms of a timeline, obviously today we're getting this is not tentative, so I should have deleted that, but obviously today we're presenting this strategy to you, and we welcome your feedback, not just today, but throughout this process. We're going to work on a press release and the marketing of this initiative, and we want to take from today to the month of February to do that. We want to start doing real outreach, real engagement, really getting the word out. It makes no sense to host these public meetings until folks are aware that these public meetings are taking place. So we're going to take some time to do some marketing of the initiative. We will have the 3 public meetings in February, March of this year, as well as the walkabouts around February, March of this year. The recommendations report will also be provided in the spring, and we'll come back before this governing body and present the final findings of that report. And that'll also be done in the spring of this year. And then with that said, I'd like to thank you all for your time. I'm happy to take any feedback, comments, and or questions.
Thank you. Jennifer, go back 2 slides. Yes, the third bullet point, existing conditions.
Yes.
Give me some insight as to your strategy for documenting existing conditions. Are going to be photographs? Because I think we need a baseline.
Yes.
And hopefully that we'll be able to establish a baseline of how things are now at different times of day, right? I mean, it may look differently at sunrise than it does in the evening. So let's just make sure we have a strategy that documents the conditions of the waterfront at all times of the day visually.
And throughout the year too, Mayor, because we may
Yes.
realize that that throughout the year, when we really think about it, the boat show and Sunfresh are the 2 most critical points where people mostly utilize the waterfront. Other than that, for the most part, it's just the folks that are walking by it or running, but it's mostly utilized.
Sleeping there, the homeless.
Or that.
Yeah.
Thanks for the reminder. Or that, Mayor. So we just, want to make sure that we look at that not just throughout the day, but throughout the year and how we can maximize the use of that space.
Good. Thank you. President Warren?
Thank you so much. This feels really good. I like this tremendously because I think first and foremost it shows the ability of this administration, this commission to pivot and to show that we are sincerely listening to what our residents are saying. And I like that we're evidencing that and people can feel good about participating in the process. I love the vision. I love the QR codes. I sincerely appreciate the approach. I'm particularly, I know that community engagement is important, and to have the approach that we're considering here is important. I think that it's also important to note that the waterfront is beautiful in West Palm Beach, and it does belong to everyone. We have more than 120, approximately, 1,000 people that live here in this city, and not just is it important to our residents, all of our residents, but it is important to the people that choose West Palm Beach waterfront as a destination. Right. So I've heard your conversation. I've heard you say that you're engaging the business community as well. I think all of those perspectives are important to consider as we move forward, because there's a lot that happens, and it is the heartbeat, of West Palm Beach. Just this earnest approach, I think, is amazing. I love the Your Waterfront, Your Way, and I'm looking forward to this being a way forward and how we are engaging the community to participate and for them to feel valued and know that their voices are heard and that their voices are considered in the decision process. So thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Jennifer, and everyone else that is involved in this process.
Thank you,
Great
Commissioner.
start.
Sure.
Thank you.
Commissioner Fox?
Thank you so much. I do want to say thank you to the administration for this. This is something I know that the downtown neighborhood has been calling me since last summer to ask, what the next steps were. And I had the opportunity to report to them last week at their meeting, and they were all anxiously looking forward to participating. And so thank you to everyone involved for helping all of our residents and businesses and visitors to have such an extensive opportunity to be involved and help us see the vision for the future of the waterfront, things that we might not already be thinking about. I think when you mention the Sunfest and Boat Show, we also have a green market every Saturday that fills the whole waterfront, during Sandyland, during the marathon weekends. It's not just, those kind of two huge events of the year that we see a lot of people, activating the waterfront, but it would be exciting if we could find other opportunities to do that, daily and not just for, when there's the special opportunities and special events. So thank you for that. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about what you're thinking in terms of timeline for short and long-term recommendations. Are we looking at short-term being, in the next year, and long-term being a forever, opportunities? Or if you could talk a little bit about that. And then when we get the recommendations, if you have considered what are the next steps, they will be presented to us, and then we'll be looking to make more decisions as a commission, or are there other opportunities for the public to see what those short-term, long-term recommendations are and have feedback? Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Great question. So the first one is, short-term or long-term, what is the time frame? Well, that really depends on the feedback that we receive, right? So hopefully we'll have some short-term ones that could be implemented. Maybe there's more activation things that we'd like to do, or more, potential events. So those are relatively short-term. But from a long-term perspective, one thing that I could easily think of is resilience efforts that we need to address, right? So those are obviously more long-term strategies in terms of what time frame that is. Penny, and we can discuss that in greater detail, and that will be included in the report. But it really depends on, the feedback, all of the information that we're gathering, and what those actual strategies are, and then we can determine whether they're, short or long term. So it's hard to answer that question until we have an understanding of what those recommendations are. Now, as it relates to next steps after this is completed, that's a decision that mayor, administration, and this governing body will have to make in terms of, how they'd like to proceed. That'll ultimately be up to you to make that decision. I'm tasked with giving you recommendations, a report, and this strategy. Anything other than that will be left to mayor and city administration.
Yeah, this is a report. It'll come back to the commission, and we'll have a discussion as the legislative body and executive body as to what the next steps will be from there. So this is how we get to the report. They'll report out to us, and then we will have a discussion as to where we go from there. Commissioner Peduzzi?
Thank you, Mayor. Just briefly, I think it's a good plan. Commend you for it. I think it's important that not only do we have invited small groups with specific interests, that we also make sure that we have some larger charrettes for our residents in general, for our businesses in general, so that everyone feels like they've had the opportunity to participate. And I think that's going to be the key to success here for us going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Commissioner Lambert?
Thank you. I've heard my colleagues say this feels different. This feels good. We're approaching it, not same old stuff, different day type of scenario. And I really appreciate that, and I like that. I would say that what I kind of felt about, Irene, your presentation was when we get ULI studies or case studies about other cities, this is usually the kind of feedback and outreach, because we're usually studying something really big, and I'm really proud of our city that we are going to undertake this effort. And I know, Irene, you talked about those, the different ways that you'd be getting feedback in the slide before that. Exactly. I loved this, that they'll have visuals. I think, the community outreach that we've been to and some recently that we've had, where there's visuals, where there's ideas of maybe things that have taken place in other places that, sometimes it's a hard time to visualize it if we're just hearing people talk about it. So I wasn't sure if, and maybe this is later, after we get all of the feedback and we get the report, maybe there's opportunities to have experiential kind of scenarios. So I'm seeing some head nodding, so that's great. I guess, and maybe this is a stretch, but I'll put it out there, but because this seems so inspirational and so just out of the box for us, I love that, I would maybe ask if you'd consider one other component. And that would be, if there is, for people who want to take this one step further, outside of the charrettes, outside of the meetings, maybe there are places within the state that aren't, too far. If some people feel inspired to go and drive, or they're already going there for business. For example, if anybody has any business over in St. Petersburg, the waterfront that they recently redid looks amazing and was a huge transformation for that city. Or if people can't travel, maybe there's, a list of websites or books that might inspire and help people to understand what it is that I think we're trying to capture here. And I've mentioned this book before, and I love it, so I'll mention it again in case you take this up. But Happy City, it really talks about why planners create the environment that we do within cities, and I think that our waterfront, is this opportunity to create this happy city where, yes, beautification and overlooking the water and having a beautiful view is one element of having a happy city, but there are many other elements as well. And so just one other piece to help complement what you all have put together. Thank you.
Thank you for your feedback, Commissioner. And I do want to say, folks are visual. And for the most part, one of the things that we are going to have is, pretty much taking what we have now and showing some, we're not paying a lot of money for actual design. We're not going in that direction just yet, but having some visualizations of what it could potentially look like. This is what it is now, existing condition. This is what it could potentially be. And so visualization and making sure that we provide enough visuals so that residents could picture what it could look like, that's going to be a big part of this process, and a big part of ultimately the recommendations report, so that you could see what ultimately could be our waterfront in the future. So there will be a lot of visualization. I get what you're saying, doing some sort of site visit or some type of activity for folks who'd like to attend. We'll consider that. And thank you for your feedback.
I like the concept that you expressed with the happy city, because it really captures what we're doing here. What makes the waterfront attractive to folks in the northern part of our city, what makes that a part of the happy city, may be different than what is happening in the south end of the city. So happiness is subjective, right? And so what we're trying to do is get as many voices to tell us what they want to see in their happy waterfront. And that is really the underlying theme of what we're trying to do here, is to hear as many voices as we possibly can, as many views as we can, from many people as we can, and many stakeholders as we can, as to what the waterfront should be to make it part of a happy city. Commissioner Fox.
Thank you so much. I know, Jennifer, I think you mentioned that this was an effort just bridge to bridge, and I take that to mean the east side only near the waterfront, but I know that we had recently been talking about, well, I guess for several years there's been talk about changes to the visitor center, to the Great Lawn area, and I think you and I discussed that recently, that this is going to be kind of a disconnected effort from that effort, but I did see Sibylle walk in. I've had a lot of questions about that effort, so I'm just wondering if there's at least any kind of timeline or additional information you would want to mention now for people who are curious about that project, and when that might be coming forward.
That's a separate discussion, and I'm happy to have Sabile sit down with you and talk about that. It's really Sabile combined with the CRA, and they could talk to you all about that. But that's a separate track. Yes, it's part of our waterfront, but it's something that had been planned for months before, and I didn't want this to slow that down. Sabile, at some point, schedule meetings with the commissioners and give them an update on where you are with the visitor center, the playground. There'll be an art installation there. That's a very exciting phase as to what some of the redesigns we're doing with the waterfront. And I think it's also important that we go back to the definition of what this will cover. It is bridge to bridge. It's not just a Great Lawn. And so there's a lot of territory to be covered, and this can make sure as we do this outreach that people understand what we mean by the waterfront, and that definition is before them, whether it's through the visuals or through the survey or whatever. So it's not just the Great Lawn that we're talking about.
Right. We have a maps, Mayor, that are going to be part of all of the materials, so they have highlighted areas so they know exactly what we're focusing on.
Very good. Any other questions on this? Comments? Kudos to you, Jennifer, your team, to the consultants that you brought in. Best wishes for a speedy recovery to Charisma. And I am excited about the direction that this is taking. You did capture my vision very well, and I think that we'll have some exciting interactions with our public, and I hope that the public will take advantage of this opportunity to weigh in on what they want to see in their waterfront.
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you all very much for that. I don't have anything under Mayor's Matters. Commissioners, do you have anything for the good of the body? Any of you? Commissioner Lambert, yes.
Just, this kind of reminded me of the great work that we did on those visioning sessions in all the districts. I was just wondering if we had the final report yet, or?
No, we're in the process of getting that. Where's Tom? Oh, there's Tom. Okay. Yeah, Tom, yes.
Okay, great.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that we're putting together in the form of a report, so we will be getting back to you on that.
That's great. I just think that things like this can help guide us in making
Absolutely,
the best decisions
absolutely, absolutely. Anything else for the good of the body? Okay, if that's the case, then this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all very much.